Listen, all this overpopulation stuff is a scam, and it's an excuse for murder and child sacrifice. And that's what I'm going to be talking about in this video. So stay tuned, brace yourselves, because we're going to be getting straight to the nitty gritty. We're going to be thinking with our heads. We're going to put our thinking caps on, right? When I was in primary school, I had a teacher who used to be like, have you guys all put your thinking caps on? Put your thinking caps on. Like, so today we're going to put our thinking caps on, right? And we're going to talk about this overpopulation thing. Because what I've noticed is a lot of these very evil individuals in the world today, sociopaths, psychopaths, narcissists of this world, aka the Bill Gateses and people, have this thing about telling us that we are overpopulating, right? Overpopulating. And I just think this is the biggest scam, because it gets people to think, oh, well, I'm going to help the world by making sure that there are no children, or that I'm not having as many children, or whatever, right? And here's the thing. First of all, that's untrue. I believe that's completely untrue. If you actually look at the world, if you live somewhere like, for example, in the United Kingdom, right? For those people living in the United Kingdom, I'll say this. Everybody lives on top of each other. It's a very small place and there's a lot of people. So it's very possible for you to feel or think that overpopulation is a real thing. But the reality is, the way I understand it, the Lord told us to be fruitful and multiply. He built this earth and this world for us to live on. If we were being overpopulated, he would not be allowing us to have a child. Any child, I believe, that is born, it means God intended for that life to be born. Now, I know science doesn't want to say that, and y'all know I'm a woman of science. I got my degree, my bachelor's with honors, okay, in chemistry and all that, right? I've done my year in research and all that, but a year of research. But the thing is, it's a scam, because I personally believe that God created this earth, right? He created this earth, and then he created us. And every single one of us who he allows to be born has a purpose and has a plan. He has a plan and a purpose for us. He created us on purpose. So this idea that, like, we're just overpopulating and babies are just happening that shouldn't really be here is so demonic. And I feel like part of the reason I feel this is so demonic is because so much of what the world and science is trying to tell people is that you and your existence and the fact that you're here is just by chance, and your life is nothing and it means nothing. Like, we started in nothing. We started from nothing. It just all happened by chance. You're just here by chance, and it's all just nothing, and it's anything. And now, because we're all just having too much sex, everybody now we're saying that the world is overpopulating. That's absolutely ridiculous. I'll tell you that from at this very exact moment. That is absolutely ridiculous, guys. Every single life, I believe, that is on earth, God intended for that life to be here. Every single egg that becomes fertilized, that starts to grow into a baby, into a fetus, into an embryo, etc. I believe God intended for those lives to be here. And the reason why I feel like a lot of these people are saying the opposite is because it sounds nice. It sounds like now we're at the point in the society where we can calculate how much CO2 emissions the average human being is adding to the atmosphere. Now we're at a time where we can calculate how much extra money it costs to raise this number of children as versus this number of children. And it makes it easy for us to fall into the trap. And I've heard so many people be like, oh, because of overpopulation, well, I'm not going to have kids. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. Not to be rude to anybody. I'm not trying to, be horrible towards anybody, but that's absolutely ridiculous. It's an excuse for murder and child sacrifice, because now it's like, oh, well, if people are having kids. And have you noticed how, and this is how you know it's evil, because Satan always attacks the children. You know, the types of crimes and things we all think in society are the absolute worst. And I think we can, for a majority of people in society, at least in modern Western society today, would agree that, like, the most disgusting, horrible crimes are crimes involving abuse and children. And those types of things. And I won't even get into it because you guys already know what we're all thinking, right? So isn't it interesting how a lot of these powers, a lot of the things that they promote, it's always things that could attack the children. It's always things that go against the youngest people involved. So even with this, it's like, oh, just like, and I saw a video, and this really hurt my feelings, and it also hurt the feelings of the YouTuber that said this, and I won't include them because I don't know if they'd want to be mentioned on my channel, because I talk about lots of things that people don't want to address. But anyway, but basically this woman, she got pregnant. And little did the doctors and people know, I don't know if the doctors knew, but she'd had a long journey of not being able to have children in the first place. And she never thought she was actually going to be able to have children. God bless her, she's actually on her second child now, so praise the Lord. But anyway, And so she has her second child, and the doctor says, you know, we're suspecting that your child's going to have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you know, disability or whatever. And then the doctor's like, but don't worry, you can just end the pregnancy and we'll just start again. And she was like, and she was genuinely traumatized that the doctor just thought that this was just something we were just going to overlook and just let go of, as if this is not a life in her, you know, in her stomach. And she decided anyway to take her child through to full term. She hasn't explained what the child has, whatever it was, but it's not something at least that seems visible as far as what we can see. But the point why I mention all of this is because this is where we're at in society, and they say stuff like this, but they don't tell you that the reason why they were in favor of things like abortion or whatever is because they need aborted cells in order to do a lot of the science, the investigations, the scientific research that they're doing. They need aborted cells because, as somebody who's done science, I'll tell you this: the cells of babies and children are like some of the best cells they have to use because of the stem cells that they have, like from embryos and from babies that are still in the womb, because they're cells that have the ability to grow. So they're great cells for a scientist. If we're going to take morality and ethics out of the building, those are great cells for them to use. And this is what they don't tell, and this is what the average person won't understand, that, for example, it's not just as easy as them saying, oh, we're going to ask some adults who don't mind giving up some of their cells instead of using the children. That's not an option, because they need the children's cells, right? So that's one of the reasons why they want to do this. I believe the other reason is just us becoming desensitized in general to the killing of children. I mean, there was a picture I saw, and it really broke my heart, like when I saw it, and I saw it on Instagram, and it was basically like, I think it was in New York, and there was a van, and it had boxes that were just stacked to go in this van. And in those boxes were just literally all the cells of the dead babies they'd killed. Like all, and when I say dead babies, I'm talking about babies that had been aborted. And isn't it interesting how we talk about in society today that it's, you know, what's that whole thing about conception versus birth? Does life starts at conception versus life starts at birth or whatever, right? Isn't it interesting that they promote this type of stuff? They promote this overpopulation stuff. And then they're the same people who benefit and profit off of and get rich off of those very things that they're talking about. Because it's not like, if they're doing it for humankind and man good, or the good of mankind or whatever, then it shouldn't really be, how is it that, it's very coincidental, let me say this, it's very coincidental to me that they then on the other end just so happen to benefit off of those things in their own research, and they use it. I mean, even like I said before, you know, a lot of vaccinations and stuff today, you'd be surprised that they use the cells of aborted babies. They use the cells of aborted babies for that stuff. That's what they do. So they're not just encouraging this because they care about women's rights. And this is why I always say to you guys that we've got to be careful. A lot of things sound nice, and because we're humans and we have emotions, and that's normal, you know, I believe even God has his emotions as well, right? It's very easy to get us caught up in things and be like, oh, well, I'm a woman and I want to fight for this. And I'm a woman, guys. When I talk to you about this type of stuff, especially kids and stuff, especially having a womb, listen, I have a womb, and I go through the struggles and the stresses of what that means. And it's like a never-ending cycle, as you know, as for us as women, because even if you're not necessarily, you know, going through, you know, the usual monthly whatever, your body's hormones are always changing because your body's always in, you know, that kind of cycles of going through stuff. So it's not like I'm talking about things and I don't understand, but I'm just looking at it and I'm like, what's the message, and who benefits off of that message really, right? People who are benefiting off of it, it's these pharmaceutical companies, these so-called healthcare companies and stuff, who make money taking those babies. Because I didn't talk about, I don't know if I think I mentioned this in an old video, but I mention it now. Did you guys know this, right? So there was a story, and I found like a video about this on YouTube. There was a woman, and I believe she was a black woman as well. And pretty much what happened is she was ill, I think with cancer or something, and she died in the end, in the long story short. But they had some of her cells, and they realized that her cells, they just continue to regenerate, which made them great for research and stuff, for research purposes. So what they decided to do is they made a lot of money off of her cells, and I believe they're still using the same woman's cells to this day, because it just turns out that she had those amazing cells. Now, her family never made any money off of all this research that all these other people have been getting rich off of, because they didn't tell them. And in fact, now to this point, those of you, all of us who go into the hospital, when they take our cells, when you're going for a blood test, when you're getting a sample of this and a sample of that, They have the right to use your cells, even if you just went in to get a blood test, even if you just went in because you were feeling however, they have the right to use your samples and profit off of it without you having any right to making a cut off of it or even knowing what that stuff went for. And so that's what I personally don't even trust. This is one of the main reasons I don't trust the healthcare system and pharmaceutical sciences and all of that. And it's so funny because when I was doing my degree in chemistry, of course, chemistry and pharmaceutical are in the same category because it's very, pharmaceutical chemistry is very, pharmaceutical science is very chemistry based. It's basically chemistry, isn't it? So for me, I always just knew for some reason at the time, I was like, I'm not going into pharmaceutical science. I am not doing that. Like, I just knew I wasn't. And I thank God, and I believe it was God, because it's all, anyways, the origin of the word pharmacy was pharmakia, which also means witchcraft. So there you go. For free. There's a bit of knowledge for free. And so, you know, this is what they're doing with the cells. So now when you go and get your do your thing, and you're going to the hospital thinking you're just having your checkup or whatever, if you've got great cells, first of all, they'll probably never tell you about it. Second of all, they're going to profit off of it and use it for whatever research purposes they need. And so for me, it's like, I just feel like a lot of this stuff that we hear, it sounds nice and it sounds cute and it sounds whatever. Even like if you think about this meat industry and everyone's like, oh, people should stop eating meat. Now, I want to say this. I definitely think that we overconsume meat products, animal products, and I also think we waste them. And I also am very much against horrible treatment of animals, which is one of the reasons that as a meat eater, where I can, as much as I can, I prefer to go to a butcher, a fishmongers, people who do this stuff for themselves, who are not just, you know, keeping 1,000 chickens in very tiny spaces and stuff like that, you know. And I do the same with my fruit and vegetables when I can, you know, go to an actual market for a farmer, support a proper business. That's the way I think we should do it. And I think if everybody was doing it, and if everybody who ate meat was prepared to kill their meat, which personally I am, I've been in that situation before. When I lived in Africa, we had chickens, we killed our own chickens. That might be uncomfortable for people. I was very young, I was like 7 years old, so that's why for me, it's not, when people say stuff like, oh, if you're going to eat meat, you should be prepared to kill it. I'm like, yeah, well, I dealt with that reality then. It didn't traumatize me. I was just like, hey, well, if you're going to eat chicken, and the chicken, this is how the chicken, like, it's either you're going to accept this reality or you should stop eating chicken. And this was my own thoughts at like 7 years old, right? But a lot of this stuff so I'm not saying that a lot of these things are an issue, and I hate waste. I hate wasting food. I really hate wasting food, and I even would apologize to the Lord when I waste food, because I'm like, I'm so sorry, God, like, you have provided for us on earth so many different ways. We should not be just wasting stuff. So it's not that I'm like ignoring those issues, because I think a lot of this stuff, all this climate change stuff and whatever, would be rectified if we all took our own individual issues seriously. But I feel that a lot of this stuff that they're pushing, this like, oh, you know, we're overpopulating. Oh, and by the way, we're eating too much meat. Everybody go vegan. But then they're also the same people you find, and it's interesting when you look into research, you find the same people who push a certain narrative will be the same people who have the business that benefits off of that. So the same people who say, oh, we're eating too much meat, people need to go vegan, there's all these incredible vegan meat options out there, you'll find those are the ones who own companies that make vegan meat options. So it's like, are you doing this for the planet or are you doing this for you? In the same way I said with the overpopulation thing, a lot of these people say we're overpopulating, there's people having too many kids, They're the same people who benefit off of things like abortions, because they're the ones who are harvesting all these children, these dead children that people are aborting. They're the ones who are needing excuses to be taking drugs around the world, right? To go, and they're like, oh, well, people in less economically developed countries, that was a term we had in geography, and I hated it then, I hate it now, the how you describe places. So you describe somewhere, for example, like the United Kingdom or the United States as a more economically developed country, and then you have somewhere like certain places in Africa and Asia would be classed as less economically developed. And so what these people would say is that they go to those places, and to help them, they're going to help by giving them, you know, like contraceptives, which is interesting, isn't it? How they can prevent pregnancy over there, but over here we just want to go straight for the abortion route. Now, why do we want to go for the abortion route? Because we want the baby to be there. We just want to kill it so we can keep the cells. See what I'm saying? Whereas when they're going to these other places, they're preventing the children from being there in the first place. In fact, they're even encouraging giving medication that reduces fertility. Reduces the fertility in women. This is the thing. These are the things that, like, I sit there and I think to myself, are we going to be dumb and just like overlook this and let this go over our heads, or are we going to wake up and put two and two together? Because it doesn't make any sense, right? And you'll find that a lot of these people, like, even when I heard Bill Gates saying, it's like, most people only want 2 kids anyway that can look after them just so that they can look after you in your old age, which I'm going to talk about how that isn't even in and of itself is evil in a separate video. Because that way of thinking, is, to me, is just so evil. Like, you're just having kids just to look after you. That's backwards. I'm so sorry. That's backwards. And there's a lot of cultures in the world that do that. Either way, my point is that overpopulation, I believe, is a scam. First of all, I'm not saying we need to cover all of the earth. I think it's great that there are millions of acres of land or hundreds of thousands of acres of land that there is no human being on. I think that's amazing because that's what the earth needs, right? But there is so much more space to go in the earth. The problem is more us in society. The problem is that you have even Bill Gates, who I just mentioned, who owns, I think he's one of the biggest landowners in the United States of America. Have you seen the size of the United States of America? That place is freaking huge. So for him to be one of the largest, and this is why I thought the same thing about the UK. I was like, you know what? If you look around the UK is like, I think it's like, I can't remember how I worked it out, but it's something like there's like let's say there's 80 million people in the UK, which I think it's around 80 million. And I believe that the amount of land is around like 67 million acres or something like that. So even on that note, that means that people could actually everybody could actually have a pretty decent amount of land where they could have their own farm, be growing their own crops, doing their own thing, probably, you know, have maybe their own well and this and that. People could be living for themselves, wasting a lot less, protecting, looking after the animals, etc., etc., having as many kids as they want because they've got plenty of space for it. But they don't talk about that. They talk about the fact that, because you know why? Because they want to be the ones who are the major landowners, right? They want to be the ones who are in control of everything. They just want to take us who are already in smaller, living in smaller situations with less, make us feel like what we're doing is such a big, what we're doing is what needs to change, when in reality, if anything, it's what they're doing that needs to change. Like, I remember I read a statistic, I read a fact that there are enough diamonds on earth for every single human being, even all this overpopulation stuff, all this overpopulation nonsense, that every single human being could own their own full cup of diamonds, like a cup full. That's how many diamonds there are on this earth right now, that we could all afford to have that. So if these people were that concerned about fairness and blah blah blah, how come we're not making sure stuff like that exists? Because they don't really care about that. Just like they don't really care about overpopulation, just like they don't really care about the planet, they don't really care about the animals. They care about doing whatever their agenda is and finding a way to get us into our feelings, get us upset or feeling guilty, because guilt and fear are great motivators for humankind. That's one thing I've had to realize. Guilt and fear are great ways to get people to do stuff, especially guilt. Because then people are like, oh, well, I want to be, because we all want to see ourselves as a good person. Like I always say to you guys, I don't see myself as a good person. I don't see anyone as a good person. The only good person who ever existed was Jesus. He was perfect. The rest of us, we've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And it's not for us to feel bad about. It's not for us to be wallowing in self-pity. It's for us to acknowledge that, listen, we're never going to be perfect. We never would have been, and we never will be. That's okay. Let's, in that imperfection, that's why I trust in the Lord. And I'm like, Lord, what's my job to do? What's my purpose to do in this time that I'm on earth? None of this, oh, you're just here because you're here and it's all by accident, and the Big Bang happened by accident, and then it all developed just by chance, and you're here by chance, so really your life means nothing. No, it's more like God put me and you and everybody on this planet for a reason. We all have a part to play in the overall plan of what's going to help us in humanity. When we understand that, we do that, and then we don't feel guilt and we don't feel condemnation past that. And that's what true peace I feel like people would have. Because the more we talk about overpopulation, climate change, this, that, it's like everybody's trying to reach 50 different things that they have to do in order to be classed as a good citizen. That to me is not the way to live. But I tell you what, it's a great way for business. It's a great way to make business if you're a business owner or one of these elites, as we call them, rich people who just want to sell stories to us in order to benefit their own businesses. If you own, you know, a health organization and you want to be having those aborted baby cells to be doing your research, it makes sense for you to be in favor of abortion. It makes sense for you to be talking about overpopulation, etc., etc., because then you get to over here justify people killing babies in the Western world, and over there in other countries justify, you know, reducing fertility and why that needs to be done. Over here you get to justify, oh, let's stop eating meat, let's stop doing the thing. And isn't it funny, like, this is why I always say to people, and this is why I'm a believer in God. You see, God gives us what we need from God is given to us for free. If you want to eat, the food is there. You can go and pick yourself an apple off a tree. You can go and kill an animal. You can do whatever you're going to do, right? If you want to have a relationship, you want to have a baby, that's free. Technically, it's free, right? Even owning land and stuff, historically, land and houses and things used to be given down in generations. Nowadays, again, we've allowed the evil powers of the world have taken over so much that now obviously people rent and a lot of people own, so on and so forth. But the way that God intended for things to be was very free. We've become into a society where we're very reliant now on other people in order to be able to do what we need to do. And that's where the real problem is. Because a lot of people, if you really thought about it and if you put the time and effort into it, you could actually become self-sustaining and not need to rely on a lot of these people, right? And a lot of this stuff they talk about would just go right out the window very quickly. You know, even the school system, before modern society, teaching of maths, English and stuff used to be done by the parents. You see what I mean? So it's a lot of just, we will get you to feel like you can't do something, or like what you're doing is wrong, and then we'll provide you the solution that you want to invest in because you want to see yourself as a good person, because you need help, because now you don't understand how to do this thing. It's going to backfire on you and it's going to profit us. That's what I feel like about overpopulation, if I can be honest with you guys. That's how I feel about it. I feel like if everybody in this world was living in a reasonable amount of space, could have their own little mini farm, even if it's just a mini farm. Maybe you do want to be vegetarian. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be vegetarian or vegan for your own whatever reasons. Absolutely go ahead and do that. I guarantee you, if we did stuff like that, the whole world would not be talking about climate change and blah blah blah. Because how many of you are even owning a company that's creating a level of CO2 emissions that probably somewhere like Amazon is? Considering that people are even getting Amazon every day and getting like 4 or 5 packages. Imagine if there's 100,000 people doing that, what the CO2 emissions are. But nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about that, how that's affecting the earth. Because why? That's benefiting the money of these people. That's benefiting the money of those businesses. What's not benefiting them is us living for ourselves, us being self-sustaining, us wanting to live our lives how we want to live them, us having as many children as we want to have, and keeping children whether we plan on having them or not, because they want the cells of the aborted babies. So I don't know, y'all let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I love to hear your thoughts, your opinions, your feelings, because you know there's just a lot of stuff going on, and I feel like let's just open the dialogue. Like I always say to you guys, we don't all have to agree on everything. We don't have to even agree on anything, but let's at least be open to have the dialogue, to have the back and forth, you know, to understand where each other is coming from. Because unfortunately in this world today, one of the things that's working against us is us all trying to be on the same side. And I actually think we were never built to be that way. Everybody feels differently about different things. Everybody wants different things in different ways. The only way we get to what's really best for everybody is a reality where it's okay for everybody to live as the way that they personally are choosing to live, because that's what the free will that God gave us, that we all have free will. And so in the same way that I want the free will to live my life the way I do, is the same way I want to respect your free will and anybody else's free will out there, right? But we don't really live in a society that wants that. We live in a society that tries to push us all into the same boat, and that is evil, demonic and satanic anyway, because somebody's always going to have to lose out in that reality. So anyway, you guys let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Don't forget to subscribe if you've enjoyed my video. Let me know what you think about overpopulation. Is it a scam? Also, do like this video if you've liked it. I really appreciate that, guys. I do love seeing a like. I know not everybody always wants to write a comment, and even if you do write a comment, like it anyway, because it's good to know who liked it. Other than that, guys, God bless every single one of you, and I'll see you in my next one. Goodbye.